Right, short date please and learn objective. Okay, and then we get on with the lesson. Pause the video while you do that. Okay. Right, okay. So last lesson we found a fraction of a number. So it's like 2/3 of 60, and you'd find 1/3 of 60. And it would be, how many threes are in 60? 20. So 2/3 would be 40. So you did that with fractions, and actually we're going to do the same now really with percentages. I know we have done this. We did it before Christmas, but it's a good reminder. Okay, it's a good reminder to go over them again. Okay, so let's start off with if first one is 10%, and this is the key one to be able to do really with today's work anyway. So if we can find 10% of, let's go with 10% of 80. Okay, so 10% is the same as a tenth, isn't it? 10% is the same as a tenth. So whenever you find 10%, you're just dividing it by 10. Okay, you're finding a tenth. So anything where you use 10%, you divide it by 10. How many tens are in 80? 8. Okay, so again, 10% of 30 will be how many tens are in 30? 3. Okay, because 10% is the same as 1/10, isn't it? Okay. If you had to find 10% of 25, okay, let's go for 10% of £25. So I have to find a tenth of it. So 10% is the same as a tenth. So I'm dividing it by 10. Now remember, when I'm dividing by 10, okay, and it involves a decimal point like that, I will move the decimal point one place to the left and move the numbers one to the right. So I'm going to move the decimal to make it smaller. So that becomes £2.50. Okay, 10% £2.50, because we're dividing by 10. So to find 10% of anything, you just divide by 10. Divide the number by 10. Okay, and then we use that 10%, don't we, to find other numbers. So if I wanted to find, let's start with, if I wanted to find 20% of £4, okay, first thing I'm going to do is find 10%. 10% of £4. Now actually what I think I'll do here, okay, I'm going to turn this into pence. 10% of 400 pence. Okay, so I know 10% I'm dividing by 10, so that would be 40 pence. Okay, dividing by 10, remember to find 10%. So if I want to find 20%, I'm timesing that by 2, so I times my answer by 2, and it gives me 80 pence, isn't it? Okay, so I find 10% first, and then I double it to get 20%. Okay, and the same if I need to get 30% of something. 30%. Okay, 30% of £12. Okay, so I'm going to find 10% first of all. So 10% of £12. So on that one, I'm dividing by 10. To find 10%, I think I'm going to divide this by 10, so I'm going to move the numbers one place, so it becomes £1.20. Okay, £1.20. Now I found 10%. I should be able to find 30%. How am I getting from the 10 to the 30? Timesing by 3. So I times by 3. £1.20 times 3, £3.60. So 30% is £3.60. Hopefully this is starting to come back to us a little bit, okay, because I'm not going to spend too long on going through these. Okay, I think we should be able to work through them ourselves. Okay, if I wanted to find 50% of something, now I could, of course, say I wanted to find 50% of 30. Okay, I could, if I wanted to, find 10%, but actually 50%, what fraction is 50% the same as? It's a half, isn't it? So anything that involves 50%, I just need to halve my answer, don't I? 50% is the same as half, so half of 30 would be 15. Okay. And similarly then, if I wanted to find 25% of something, 25% of something, what I would do there is, if I wanted to find 25% of let's go with 75%, 25% of £8. Okay, 25% is the same as a quarter. Okay, so I'm just going to find a quarter of it. Oh yeah, or I can find 50% and go from there. Okay, so 25%. If I was to find 25%, I would find a quarter of it. To find a quarter of something, you halve it and halve it again, don't you? Okay, so I'm going to halve this. First of all, I'll find 50%. Let's just write that down. 50% equals £4. I'm going to halve it again. So 25% would equal £2. Okay, a quarter of £8 is £2, isn't it? You're dividing it by 4. Okay. Let's have a look then. Also, let's look at. I probably should have done this earlier. If I wanted to find 5%, say I wanted to find 5% of 80 pence. Okay. Again, I'd find 10% first. 10% of 80 would be. So find 10% of anything, you divide it by 10. So 80 divided by 10 is 8. So 5%. To get from there to there, I'm dividing by 2. I'm halving it, isn't it? To get from 10 to 5, I'll halve it. So I halve my answer there would be 4 pence. Okay. Right. I know I've gone through that quite quickly. Okay. But I'd like us, I think we should be able to remember how to do, especially these easier ones. And then we've got some trickier ones afterwards. So can you have a go at these, please? Obviously this one you can do straight in, but I would find on this one, find 10% first, find 10% first, find 10% first, and then think about how you're going to do that. So pause the video while you do that, please, and then we'll go over them afterwards. Right, so let's have a little look. So the first one, 10%. 10% of 70, 10% of 70, and that will obviously equal, so to find 10% we divide by 10, 70 divided by 10, 7, okay. Get a bit trickier, 5% of £4. Now what we do first is find 10%, again think of £4 as 400 pence, okay. So find 10% of 400. So that is 400 divided by 10. If I'm divided by 10, I'm just losing one of those zeros, aren't I? 400 divided by 10, we just lose the zero. So that will give me 40 pence. So therefore, okay, to find 5%, I need to halve that, okay? So I'm dividing that by 2. I'm halving it. So it'll be 20 pence, okay? So 20 pence. The answer to that one is 20 pence. Okay. Good. 20% of 50. First of all, I find 10%. 10% is equal to, so it's 10% of 50. So that's 50 divided by 10 is 5. To find 20%, I'm timesing by 2, aren't I? So I times that by 2, so it gives me 10. Okay. And then 30% is the same sort of thing, isn't it? Okay, where I find 10%, so the question is 30% of 80. So I find 10% of 80. So it's 80 divided by 10 is 8. Then how do I get to 30%? From the 10 to 30, I'm timesing by 3. So I do the same thing, times it by 3. 8 times 3 is 24. My answer is 24. Okay, and then just the last one there, 25% of £60. Well, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to find 50% first. 50% of 60, which is a half, which will give me £30, and then I'm going to find 25% of 60. So go from there, I'm halving it, so I halve it again, £15. Hopefully that's hopefully we remember that, okay? If you Well, we'll talk about what we're going to do at the end of the lesson, actually. Okay, so let's just move on to some sort of slightly trickier ones. So say, for example, I wanted to find 15% of, I'm going to call it 15% of 3 meters. Now, a little bit like the work we did with the fractions, okay? Sometimes we need to convert the meters into, in this case, centimeters, okay? Because it will make it much easier. So I'm going to just convert that into 3 meters, and I'm going to convert that into 300 centimeters. So now I have to find 15% of 300. So I'm going to find 10% first of all of 300. 300 divided by 10, 30. And now I'm going to do 5%. Now the reason I'm going to do 5% is because I know 10% and 5% will give me 15%. So I have to add these up, don't I? Okay, I have to add up my percentages. So 5% of 30 of 300, but if 10% is 30, 5% is half of that, so it will be 15. And then I add those up, okay? Because 10 and 5 is 15. I add those up and the answer is 45, in this case 45 centimeters. Okay, 45 centimeters equals 45 centimeters. And sometimes I have to build up the, sort of, anyway, we'll come to some other ones. If I want to find 1% of something, if I want to find 1% of, let's go for a big number, 1% of 550. Now 1% is the same as 100th, okay? 1% is the same as 100th, so we'd have to divide that by 100. So to find 1% of something, you divide by 100. So I'm going to divide this by 100, I'm just going to put a decimal point there, okay? And remember, I'm moving the numbers one place to the right for every 0. So there's, because I'm divided by 100, I'm going to make it smaller, because I can't always remember whether it's right or left. So I know I'm going to make it smaller, so I'm going to move it 2 places to the right. So I know if I move this 2 places to the right, I have the 50 like that. So it becomes 5.50, okay? 5.50. So the answer to that one is 5.50. Because when we divide, to find 1%, we divide by 100. Which brings us then to do something like 6%. Okay, 6%. 6% of, let's go with 160. Okay, 160. Now, 6% is made up of 5% and 1%, isn't it? And that will give me 6%. So I define each of these percentages, the 6, the 5, and the 1. So to find 5%, first of all, I want to find 10%. So 10% of 160, so I'm dividing that by 10 is 16. Okay, 10% is 16, so I'm finding 10% first. Now I'm going to find 5%. So that would be 8. No, I don't need that 10% anymore. Okay. Now I have to find, also have to find 1% of 160. So that's 160 divided by 100. So again, I'm going to move those decimal numbers 2 places to the right. So that would give me 1.6. So I'm going to add those up and I get 9.6. Okay. So 6% of 160 is 9.6. You can see it starts getting trickier here. But as long as you can find 10%, you can find 5%. And you can find 1%. So from there you can find 2%, 3%, and so on. You build it up, okay? You build it up. Say, for example, I wanted to find 95% of 400. 95% of 400. Now I could find 50%, and then I could find another 10%, and another 10%, and another 10%, and another 10%, and then a 5%, and add them all up. Or I could do this, okay? Now 95% is only 5% short of 100%, isn't it? Okay, so if I can find out 5%, okay, and then I can take it away from my answer. Okay, so anything like this, I think, well, if I can find 5%, so first of all, let's find 10% of 400. So I'm dividing by 10 is 40. Okay, so now if I find 5% of 400, okay, 5% of 400, it's 20. Okay, it's 20, so that means 15, sorry, so that's 5% is 20. I don't need to do 15% here. So all I have to do is just to take 20 away from that, and that tells me 95% is equal to 380. Okay, 95% is equal to 380, because 5% is 20, and the 95% and the 5% is 100%. It comes to 400. Okay, don't worry too much if you don't get that, because it's not many questions like that. But if you kind of figured it out, that would be great. I'll tell you what we'll do before you work directly onto the work set today. Have a go at those, please. Have a go at those. Okay, pause the video while you do them, and then we'll go through them when you're done. Right, so let's look at the first one, number 6. Number 6. So we want to find 15% of 2 meters. Now straight away I'm going to convert this 2 meters into centimeters of 200 centimeters. To find 15%, I know I can find 10 and 5%, and when I add those up, it comes to 15%. So 10% of 200 is 20. 5% of 200 is 10. So 15% is equal to 30. So hopefully you've got that. Equals 30 centimeters. Okay. Let's have a look at number 7. 1% of 250. Now to find 1% of anything, you divide by 100. So it becomes 250 divided by 100. So remember, that would be 250 point nothing. So because I'm divided by 100, I can move the numbers 2 places to the right. So it becomes 2.50. Okay, you don't have to have that 0 if you don't want to, but that's okay if you leave it in there. Equals 2.5 or 2.50. Okay, both correct. 6% of 120. Now I know for 6% I need to find 5% and 1%. Add them together and it gives me 6%. So to find 5%, I'm going to find 10% first. So 10% of 120 is 12, because I'm dividing 120 by 12. So 5% will be 6, and 1% of 120, I have to divide 120 by 100. So I'm going to put a decimal point in there. Okay, so it becomes 1.2. Now remember, I don't need this bit here. I need the 5% is 6.00 if I want to. The 1% is 1.20. Add them up and I get 7.20. Okay, a bit tricky, that one. Okay. Right, on this last one, 2 ways of doing it. So we could find 10%. 10% of £3, which is 30 pence. And then I want to find 90%, so I can times that by 9. So I'm doing 9 times, so I'm timesing 30 by 9, which will give me 270 pence, which is £2.70. Okay, I could do it that way, and that's great if you've done it that way. Or I could do 10% of £3 is 30 pence. And I want to find 90%, so I just need to take this 10% away from £3. So I could just then do £3 minus 30 pence. Okay, minus 30 pence, and that will also give me £2.70. Some of these ones are quite tricky, so don't worry too much if you can't do those ones, and I'll talk about the different sections now. Okay. So that's basically the work today. You also have to apply them to the occasional word problem, but I know you'll be okay with that. Okay. So again, same as the last lesson. You've got a choice on where to start, on B or C. Okay, on B or C. I know that some of us will only just manage B. That's okay, but plenty of us then can go on to C. Remembering you might have to change them into the different units of measurement. So you might have to change, say, 3 meters into 300 centimeters, or you might have to change 4 kilograms to 1,000 grams. Okay, but it's up to you. So you can start on B or start on C, and just have a go. And that again, it's on the sheet attached to the portal. Okay, attached to portal. Right, good luck with those, everyone, and we'll do a little bit more of this sort of work tomorrow as well. Okay, cheers, bye bye.